Hi.
I moved the box to the left,
Right.
a little off to the side.
You mean near Rabbi Stender? Oh, now I'm on. Okay. No, it's okay. Do you want this? Yai, lie, 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 yai, 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 lie, lie, yai, 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 lie, 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 yai, lie, 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 yai, lie, 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 yai, 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 lie, 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 yai, 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 yai,
Good morning. We gather for Steve Tuckerman, and in this place that he loved, with the people he loves most, we are gathering to remember him. It seems all too familiar. This room, virtually the same people minus one, very significant one. And I join with the entire Temple Israel family to wish this family, this extended family, so much love and comfort as you walk the path without Steve going forward. I'm Rabbi Sharon Mars, and this is Cantor Batami Moses. It's our privilege to be with you this morning as fellow travelers and fellow people who loved Steve Tuckerman. If you would please silence your cell phones right now. Just find it, just turn it off. It'll be there, promise, with all of your messages. And if you would kindly just look for the pink exit signs nearest you. We are in a very secure place. We just want you to be conscious of where those exits are. As we move into this moment of not being distracted by anything except memory, Zachor, it is precious. It rivets us to this moment. We are singularly focused on love and loss and a very consequential attachment that we were privileged to have. And we'll find a new way to have with Steve. We begin with some words from our tradition. Do you want to?
Psalm 121. Shir lemalot esayinai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezuri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. A song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth.
Very conscious of everything that Steve dedicated to this world. And so the words of Psalm 15 really resonate as King David, the warrior, the poet, was looking for his answers to life and all of its kind of confusingness. He wrote this, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur be'ohalecha mi yishkon behar kodshecha. He asked, who is it who deserves to enter God's holy sanctuary? And he answered, that person who lives with integrity and does what is right, who speaks the truth without deceit, who has no slander upon his tongue. He doesn't do any evil to others. He doesn't mistreat his neighbor. He spurns a contemptible person, but honors those who revere God. That person never retracts a promise once made, though it may bring him harm. He lends no money at unfair rates. He accepts no bribe against the innocent. And that person who makes those deeds his own, that person's name goes on forever. And I feel like we witnessed the death of two dear people, and we really marched and marked their illness along with their life. And they taught us, in a way, a little bit more about what it means to live a good life and what it means to die. And so these words from Ben Sirah continue to resonate. He says, we are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be, so cry for the dead, hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning, but remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace and be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. Let us not seek to understand that which is too difficult for us, nor search for what is hidden, nor be preoccupied with what is beyond, because we have been shown more than we can possibly comprehend. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, but a Shem Tov, a good name, that lasts forever. Psalm 23.
I will chant these beautiful words of the Psalm 23, and then I'll ask you to join me in the English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, bino sheyarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yanaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magalei tzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech begitzo amavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha heima yanachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov chesed yerdifuni kol yemei chayai, kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Join me. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for the sake of his name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
So we gather to celebrate the life of Steve Tuckerman and bid him a fond farewell. It's hard to believe that just 2.5 months ago we were here to begin the path of mourning for one of our dearest ones, and that today we participate in that same ritual for her dearest one. As one wound is healing, another wound is far fresher. We gather close in community in this place that was sacred to both Judy and Steve, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory, and as we hold each other and hold their sacred memories tightly, we step onto this parallel path of mourning and begin to remember Steve. On this 8th night of Hanukkah, we express our Hallel, our praise, for the miracle of a single light which ignites a spark within each of us to carry forward. He would be the first to admit that he was nothing without the most precious gifts this final night of Hanukkah in his life. That is his family. So we gather them up, share our strength and love with them, the mourners, his devoted children, Brian and Audrey, Craig and Connie, and Elise and Joe, his cherished grandchildren, through whom his legacy continues, and who he was absolutely mad about, Jake, Sam, Madeline, Georgia, Ari, Charlie, Sarah, Lauren, Jackson, his siblings, Barbie and David, Tom and Jan, his brother-in-law, Stephen, plus many, many other dedicated family members and extraordinary lifelong friends, too numerous to mention by name, all of whom are family. We mourn the loss of Steve together as a community, and we will take care to remember this man, chiefly known for his love of and devotion to family and friends. I know that Steve's pet peeve was that the rabbi should speak any longer, God forbid, than 12 minutes. So I guarantee, my friend of blessed memory, that this rabbi will keep it tight. The Jewish poet Zelda helps us consider the power of a name. She says, Lechol ish yesh shem. Each of us has a name given by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Lechol ish yesh shem. Each person has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death. When the name Stephen Allen Tuckerman was first uttered, it was by his parents, Esther and Sanford. They bestowed this name upon their eldest of 3 children, with Barbie and Tom to follow. As they all grew up on Merkel, as Steve graduated from Bexley High School, his name would become synonymous with athletics. He played football, basketball, and baseball, the latter of which he would take up at the Ohio State University as an undergrad. Steve spent a short stint at Tulane, but went on to graduate a proud Buckeye and later a doctor of optometry from OSU. And in that place and in this town, that name would become, through decades of dedication, a moniker for excellence in business, in leadership, and in philanthropy. Mention the name Steve Tuckerman and hear the accolades for the man who served with distinction as a 2-term chair of Governor Jim Rhodes, appointed to the Ohio State Board of Optometry, and was the founder of the School of Optometry at Tel Aviv University, who served 2 terms as chair and relentless fundraiser of the Columbus Jewish Federation, today Jewish Columbus, who chaired the celebration of life at the James Cancer Hospital, Raising with Judy, who had been newly diagnosed at the time, but up for the fight, as we know. They raised $25 million. And that name resounds in the archives of Temple Israel, and is alive and well in this place that the Tuckermans have always called their Jewish home. Rabbi Jerome Folkman of blessed memory officiated at Steve's bar mitzvah and he was the first in the then new building at 5419 East Broad Street after we moved from Bryden Road. Years later, Steve served, this is how you know you're in a place for way too long. After that, years later, Steve served 2 terms as the president of our board of trustees, seeing through the Renaissance campaign, which completely renovated that former home. He made sure we were financially sound and strong from within, and that he could pass the torch of leadership, who would know? And for this, we all apologize. Brian, that was your dad's fault. Then you became president of the board of trustees. The thing was that for Steve, passing the leadership mantle meant inspiring others with the notion that a temple was, quote, the country club and gathering place for the folks who may not have had one. Steve was president during our sesquicentennial 150th anniversary, and I only wish he could be here in a few months as we celebrate 180 this coming May. He hired and fired a lot of rabbis. I was pretty happy to be on his good side. I feel grateful that that great name, Steve, that he continues to contribute to this holy community. And for my own friendship with him, I am very grateful. I'll always treasure my more recent conversations with Steve. As Judy's health declined and as he became a widower, he let down his guard. And he expressed his profound love and gratitude for her, for their children and grandchildren, for his canine companion, Daisy, for his and Judy's exceptional caregivers who put up with his and their sassiness. Steve loved and was grateful for you, his dear friends, and for this community which he so deeply revered, who helped give him that good name. He spoke of all of you with warmth and tenderness. That rounded out the great name he made for himself out in the world. He waxed poetic about his grandchildren and how enormously and inexhaustibly proud they made him. He talked about Judy, and quite possibly, as his daughter-in-law Connie notes, Steve died of several physical ailments, but also of a broken heart. He stuck around to take care of Judy just as his mother had done for his father. Once Judy was gone, that heart, so full of love, grown over 60 years, perhaps grew too weary, too broken to continue. That sacred name, Steve Tuckerman, is now of the ages. May he continue to inspire our own good work in this world, our own caring and creativity, our own vulnerability, our own love. Tehei nishmato tzurura b'tzura chaim. May the soul of Steve Tuckerman be bound up in the bond of life, and let us all say together, Amen. So a lot of people want to say a lot of words. I don't think I was 6 minutes, but first we're going to begin with Brian. I apologize in advance if you would like to hold this. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back. And thank you for honoring my father with your presence. While I'm grateful to see so many familiar faces, I'm also sorry that we are all gathered here so soon again. A few ground rules before we start. Although we are mourning, and this may be emotional, this is not a sad day. Dad would want us to celebrate his life. Dad had a spectacular 80 years, and he wouldn't trade it with anyone. He lived a charmed life, and as I said a couple months ago during my mother's eulogy, my mom would have loved to take you all home to feed you. Well, in a similar vein, Dad would have loved to have sat here and listened to everybody talk about how great he was. In his mind, his athletic prowess, his business acumen, his unparalleled children and grandchildren, and most importantly, his fantastic head of hair. A bit of housekeeping. And I didn't have a lot of time to do this, so I'm going to move around to a couple different places. I rarely have my family together all at once, and so I want to address my family and say, over the past few months, I may have been a little distant and a little difficult, and I want to apologize to them. And although I will try, I probably won't be much better, but just know I am aware and thinking of you all. We know there's going to be a lot of eulogies today, and this may take a little longer than you'd prefer, but that in itself is a tribute to him. So many people wanted him to speak because he mattered to so many. You may hear us repeat the same stories, but please bear with us. We only get to do this once, and frankly, you don't really have a choice. Well, I really didn't plan on being up here today. I always knew this day would come, just not as fast as it did. I haven't had much time to prepare, and I apologize if it's a little disjointed. 4 football games yesterday didn't help my cause. But when I gave my mother's eulogy, I took the low-hanging fruit. I had 2 years to prepare and an incredible material to work with. My incorrect assumption at the time was that Craig would handle the next one. Shame on me. But it did give me an opportunity that actually helps check a box. As a family, we've been consumed with Dad's care since Mom's passing. It's been a full-time job. He spent the better part of the last 2 months in the hospital, and over that time, I've received countless condolence cards, emails, texts, and voicemails that I have not, and probably will not, respond to. So to take advantage of this opportunity, I sincerely like to thank all of you in person for your outpouring of kindness over the past couple of months, and what I anticipate will come over the next few, with one caveat going forward. I respectfully ask that if you're thinking of reaching out, and I really appreciate the sentiment, instead, please direct all your communications to Craig. He really enjoys the attention. Now, as his favorite child and parent of his favorite grandchildren, it's my job to try and encapsulate what it was like to be one of his children. At least Craig and I were incredibly fortunate to have the parents and life we were blessed with. We hit the lottery. There wasn't anything they wouldn't do for us, and family was the most important thing. Dad lived many lives. He was a father, he was a coach, he was an optometrist who built a successful chain of optical stores, and he reinvented himself as a home builder for the last 30 years of his life. I'm not even including all his charitable endeavors. So many of you were on the receiving end of his relentless phone calls for the organizations he believed in. Temple Israel, Jewish Columbus, the James. He was maniacal. He couldn't help himself, but ironically, he helped others. He and Mom were the perfect team. To many of you, she made him tolerable. Now imagine that intensity focused on his children, but not in a negative way. Yes, there was pressure, but it came with a purpose. He only had one speed, and he never slowed down. Even in the end, he didn't stop. And while he wanted to thank all the doctors and nurses that worked on him for the past few years, and he did appreciate their efforts, he was genuinely annoyed. Audrey said I couldn't say pissed, that you couldn't fix him. And Bobby, I want to thank you for always taking my countless calls and texts for both my mom and dad. Even as a close friend, it was way above the call of duty. The most important lesson he impressed on us as children was to always take care of one another. Nothing gets in the way, no matter the circumstances. That lesson holds true today. Elise, Craig, and I, as well as our spouses, have never been closer. More importantly, GP nurtured that same value in all of his 9 grandchildren. Their bond is remarkable and a direct result of his philosophy. Their relationships with one another are a living tribute to him. Dad was about family and legacy. Dad was also about sports. Sports defined our childhood. We wouldn't have had it any other way, especially when it got us out of Sunday school. Somehow he knew that sports, in our case, tennis, opened doors. In his obsessive way, he read, watched, played poorly, and traveled to learn about tennis so he could teach us and provide the opportunities for us to thrive. His Herculean efforts, as Frank will tell you, eventually led to Craig and I becoming the 3rd and 4th best players on Parkview Avenue. But eventually, tennis led the 3 of us to Tulane, where he went. It led me to meeting Audrey. who he only approved of after seeing her crush a softball at an intramural game. I like to think in my case, his love of athletics opened the doors for my children to go to the colleges of their choice and build relationships that will last the rest of their lives. Many of his grandkids became athletes, and he would rarely miss an event. I'm sure many of you have been bored by the countless stories of their achievements. Even in the hospital during his last couple of months, he streamed all of Charlie's soccer games at BU while simultaneously criticizing his coach. Outside of family and sports, Dad loved his dogs, especially his beloved Daisy, who was by his bed at the end, and who I may or may not be inheriting. Dad loved donuts, golf, great pens, burgundy socks, oversized business cards that he gave to everyone, cleaning, Rod Stewart, taking his shirt off when no one wanted him to. And oddly enough, sheep. I counted 37 in his office this morning. I leave it up to you to speculate why. We never asked, and we really don't want to know. And to ad-lib a little bit, this occurred to me this morning, so I wrote this in. And it said with love, his sense of entitlement was astonishing. Growing up, there wasn't a parking spot at an event or a table at a restaurant that he didn't think belonged to him. He did it without shame, and it never failed. I'll miss the perks. As a son, he never stopped taking care of me. In 2008, when my business was not at its best, he took me under his wing and helped me to develop a plan to make sure I didn't fail. From then until his retirement a couple years ago, we met at the Rusty Bucket 2 to 3 times a week for lunch. I will treasure and miss that time dearly. On a side note, the Bucket, of all places, was his favorite place. He held court there almost every day. He was Norm from Cheers. Everybody knew his name. Dad could also be defined by his long-term relationships, and above all by his greatest obsession, his wife, Judy. They hit 60 years this past fall. Their relationship was an example for all of us. As I mentioned to the rabbi yesterday, we think he stayed around just long enough to make sure she was taken care of the way he wanted. He really didn't trust anyone else to do it. They had a magical love story, and Audrey and I, Craig and Connie, and Elise and Joe, are left with the impossible high standards to live up to. They put up with each other's quirks. He was a neat freak, and she may or may not have had hoarding tendencies. She was a great chef, and he may or may not have had a complicated relationship with the scale. He was 6 feet tall, and she was barely 5. They were an odd couple, and it worked. Relentless, stubborn, and obsessive are all accurate descriptions of him. But his most important quality was loyalty. His friendships lasted a lifetime. Frank, Bill, Ronnie, Howard, Les. His golfing buddies, just to name a few, helped define who he was. I thank you all for putting up with him. Many of you have told us how much you loved him, as well as what a pain in the ass he could be. He had a gravitational pull, so many flaws, and yet you all kept coming back for more. Through his declining health over the past few years, you never wavered. He wanted us to thank you for all your unconditional friendship and love. It meant the world to him. He lived a full life. He left nothing on the table, maybe a little bit. He really knew how to grind, and he got the most out of himself and everyone around him. He never gave up. His only hole-in-one came very late in life, so there's still hope for me. He was a shining example for his children and grandchildren, one we can only hope to emulate. In the end, Dad was a builder. And while he may have left some things unfinished, hence the blue tape on the coffin, he built a legacy that will last for generations. As I finish today, I know he would have wanted me to share words from his favorite philosopher, Slav Gavorkovich. And yes, we have no idea who he is or what this means, but please always remember, a wet goose flies best by night. Dad, we love you, and we'll miss you.
Thank you. It's now my honor to call up Les Wexner to share a few words as a friend.
Well, obviously, to all of us, and particularly to family, friends, and neighbors, we mourn the loss of Steve and of Judy. I was reluctant to speak today because I just thought it would be difficult. And I think times like this are really primarily family times, as close as friends can be. Blood is really thicker than applesauce. And as I thought about it, and I thought about, reminiscing as friends would about friends. And I woke up this morning with a very different thought. And the last time Abigail and I were with Steve in the hospital, I think he was watching soccer and moaning or whatever he was doing. And he looked over and he said to us, I'm not done yet. And I want to get home and I want to write my own eulogy. Wouldn't we all? And so, dear friend, what I decided to do was try to speak for you. What would Steve say to us? And I think what he'd say is that probably the most important thing in the world to him, in the center of his universe, was Judy. Family, children, grandchildren were important. Friends were important. Community was important. And I think Steve would say that he was lucky to live a full life with so much love, so much opportunity, so many things done, and so optimistic about life in general, for his children, for his grandchildren, for our community. So when I thought about it, I think that family, to Steve, again, if he were speaking, he would talk about how fortunate he was to have the parents he had. And it wouldn't just been Sanford and Esther, but he would have talked about Stanley and Jean, because I think he thought and saw them as much as they were Judy's parents, they were his parents and part of the family unit. And how fortunate he was to have such great family. And he would say the same thing about siblings, clearly children. And most important to him, most recently, was grandchildren. God, how many times I heard about who won the soccer match, and who got to play, and what the coach did, and what he did, and what he was watching, and what he was listening to, and all the things that connect one to family. And I think that lesson of the primacy of family is one, if Steve were here, he'd say, that was really important to me. And boy, was I lucky to have a great family and live a great life with that family. And when he talked about community, which he was obsessed with too, whether it was Temple, the Jewish community, the broader community, being president of the Temple for several terms, leading the Columbus Jewish community, caring about the James, and both he and Judy not only gave generously of treasure, but they gave of time. And what I was thinking about, it was mentioned, Brian mentions, like, or maybe it was the rabbi, raising $25 million for the James. I mean, just the idea that you wanted to participate, and how eagerly and conscientiously both Judy and Steve would work towards helping community and helping neighbors, so that the responsibility to friends, neighbors, community was very much part of his life. And I think he was proud of that. I think he would say that too. I don't think Steve would talk much about his career, although I find it ironic, maybe he did too and would say it, that he spent the latter part of his career building houses and probably spent his whole life with Judy building homes. A home for the family, home for the community, home for neighbors, home for fundraising, home for a bird, home for multiple dogs. But that notion of home, I remember so vividly talking about in multiple homes over the years. Just the kitchen had to be exactly right for Judy for whatever she was intending to do or had done. And how big the dining room had to be for the whole family. And when we had, he would say when we had a plan for community events, so we need a living room and we need a dining room, and all the spaces that were part of a home were part of a point of view about the importance of family, friendship, and neighbors and friends and community building. And then you get to the central part of Steve's life, which was Judy. I was driving here this morning, and I was thinking, the voice saying, Jude, Jude, Steve, Steve. It was a miraculous love story, and I think what Steve would say, again, in terms of being fortunate, how fortunate he was to have met Judy and to live such a full life with her, and sharing values, goals, family, a point of view about life that was very wholesome in terms of contributing and giving, caring for each other, caring about children, caring about grandchildren, caring about friends, and caring about community. And I guess it was also a coincidence or ironic that Judy cared about cooking and Steve cared about eating. That's a very convenient partnership, if you would. But clearly, Judy was central to Steve's life, and the care that he gave her. And Abigail and I thought that Steve was hanging on just to make sure Judy was okay. And I think that mission obviously was accomplished. So, Steve wasn't able to write that eulogy. I hope, friend, that I got most of it right. Clearly, you and Judy did. And you will always be remembered, and with the fondest and loving thoughts.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call another dear friend, Howard Task.
I don't know. Put this. Does he want?
Steve would first say, can you see over the podium? That'd be the first thing he'd say. And then he would say, don't talk too long. And the other thing I would tell you is that when I worked with Steve, one of my major projects was to occasionally write a composition so that one of the kids could pass a class. So this would go on fairly often, and Steve would always say, when it comes time for me to die, you're going to deliver my eulogy. And he called this week, and one of the things he would always say to me when we get together, he said, I have so many people to thank. And before I get into my little talk, the one thing that I would like to say is that really today is about thanking Steve for all he did for all of us. So like many of you, I'm struggling today to grasp the losses our community has endured over the past few months. First Judy, just a couple of months ago, and today we remember and celebrate Steve, two remarkable people. Steve was a man of great purpose. He was curious, generous, and deeply dedicated to his family, his work, and helping others. We've already established that he was born in Dayton and to Sanford and Esther, and that the family ultimately moved to Bexley. I do want to extend my sympathies to Barbie and Tom. Steve graduated from Bexley High School, where he played baseball, football, and basketball. And Brian and Craig informed me yesterday that he believed those were the only true sports. He loved his Bexley friends, many of whom he remained close to throughout his life. After high school, Steve attended Tulane University and subsequently transferred to and graduated from the Ohio State University. And Steve was especially proud of the fact that all of his kids graduated from Tulane. I first met Steve in 1975. His office was on South 3rd Street in German Village. When I walked in, Steve greeted me warmly and invited me to sit. It was immediately clear he was a family man. As I looked around his office, I noticed pictures everywhere. Pictures of Judy, Brian, Craig, and Elise from ski trips, European vacations, and family gatherings. Years later, when I worked for him, his office on Broad Street was wallpapered with family photos in clear plastic frames. Whenever Steve and I met, we always started by talking business, but the conversation inevitably shifted to family and sometimes sports. Steve was a well-known Buckeye fan. He loved the Browns and the Cavs, but his favorite sports were tennis when his children were playing and any sport in which his grandchildren participated. Steve was a familiar face at games and matches whenever he could attend. I'm sure he did a lot of coaching. He was immensely proud of his children and grandchildren. He loved them all very much. He quelled with genuine pride in all of your accomplishments. Judy and Steve were an exceptional couple, married for 60 years and truly a team in every sense of the word. Judy was a wonderful chef, baker, and hostess. Together, they hosted countless dinners, events, holidays, and gatherings. Judy made everyone feel welcome the moment they walked through the door. Steve, on the other hand, was convinced he was the life of the party, and often he might have been. I used to tell Steve that Judy was the real draw, and he was really there to be the court jester. Together they were inseparable. Their home was filled with warmth, laughter, and hospitality, and their partnership became the foundation for everything they did, raising their family and supporting the many causes and institutions for which they so deeply cared. While Steve was trained as an optometrist and graduated from the Ohio State University College of Optometry, it was his entrepreneurial spirit and vision that truly fueled his drive. He was a pioneer in the retail optical business. Steve understood the industry for what it was, but more importantly, he saw what it could be. Many of us remember walking through Northland or Eastland Mall, passing chrome and glass storefronts with bold graphics of beautiful people wearing fashion eyewear. This was Tuckerman Optical, a chain of optical stores operating in several states. Steve's success was so notable that one industry publication featured him on its cover with the headline, "Chic of the Shopping Centers." As others began to recognize the power of his vision, Steve chose to exit the business, selling to lens crafters. He then channeled his passion for building, architecture, and design into launching the Tuckerman Development Company. The homes he built exemplify the high standards of design and taste that define New Albany. Steve loved to work. It gave him energy and pleasure, and he kept Tuckerman development going until recently when he needed to devote more time to Judy and to his own health. Beyond family and work, Steve's other great passion was philanthropy. He believed deeply in giving back, and he lived that belief. Part of the reason we are all gathered in this building today is because of the work Steve did some 30 years ago to strengthen Temple Israel. He served as president and worked tirelessly to preserve the congregation's future. Another great passion for Steve and Judy was the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center and the James Cancer Hospital. Together, they raised tens of millions of dollars for equipment and research. But beyond fundraising, they helped countless individuals receive medical care. If you need to see a particular doctor or obtain a specific procedure, all it often took was a call to Steve or Judy, and somehow it happened. Steve's generosity extended beyond institutions. He helped numerous business people by offering advice, making introductions, and sometimes reaching into his own pocket to help someone get started. Not very often, but he did do it once in a while. One example is my own story. I went to work with Steve at Tuckerman Optical in 1984. Shortly after, I was heavily recruited by several retail chains offering very lucrative opportunities. Steve didn't want me to leave, but he couldn't match the offers. As we all know, he probably could, but he didn't want to cough up the money. So he went to John Fall, who was one of our board members, who many of you probably knew, to seek counsel. Together, they came up with a plan that I would continue working with Steve while also doing what John did, sitting on boards, serving as an advisor, and counseling the owners of family-owned businesses. When Steve sold Tuckerman Optical in the early 90s, my business was a going concern, and it has supported my family for the past 40 years. I would not have had this opportunity were it not for Steve. This is who Steve was, someone who used his vision not just to build businesses, but to build people. Today, we mourn deeply, but we are so grateful. Grateful for lives fully lived, for a partnership beautifully shared, and for a legacy that will endure through family, community, and the many lives Steve touched. When we leave here today, let us honor Steve not only in memory, but in action. By living with the same generosity, curiosity, and love for family that defined his life. Rest peacefully, my friend, and thank you for everything you've done for all of us.
Thank you, Howard. We next welcome Frank Cass.
Steve and I started kindergarten together, 1948. Went to kindergarten and first grade together. After hearing all these wonderful things about him, I feel like I might be in the wrong place. And Steve would tell you the same thing. After first grade, they opened Maryland Avenue School, and I lived north of Broad. Steve lived in central Bexley and attended Cassingham Elementary. We continued to know each other playing basketball at the Jewish Center in the leagues that were there, and got reconnected very, very strongly in seventh grade at the junior high school. For the next 6 years, the two of us played on the same basketball team through junior high and high school. He never threw me one pass. Some of his high school friends are actually here today. One of the things to understand about Bexley and hopefully New Albany and Upper Arlington and these strong communities is you have friends from growing up. And so, you know, we had such great speakers tonight, and I know the grandkids are going to speak after I do. I just want to give you the context of being a lifelong friend to somebody. We had 6 years in junior high and high school. When we got our driver's licenses, our junior year, four of us, Coleman Kahn, who lives in Boulder, and Vince Mercurio, who sent me a wonderful text about Steve, Asheville, North Carolina. We would go to one of the 4 houses every day for lunch, and on Friday, we'd go to the Far East, which absolutely, for you don't know, that's Wings, okay? At the time, Kenny's father managed the place, and we would get the breaded veal cutlet with a side of spaghetti for $1. If you look at the menu today on the American side, that's now $16.95. On Friday, we play hearts every day at one of the houses, and then at Wings. During our senior year, I was fortunate in my early years growing up across the street from John Schott, who was the preeminent high school math teacher in the state of Ohio, wrote half the books that people were reading. Les probably had John Schott when he was there. If you were a good math student, Mr. Schott, didn't like grading tests. So 2 of us would grade the tests. The way Bexley worked, you had 3 6-week periods and a final in each semester. And the final counted the same as the 6 weeks. So we took the final our senior year, last finals you had to take, and lived across the street from Steve at that point, and I get a call after 10 o'clock on the, for you young kids, on the home phone line, which is all there was, and said, "Frank, could you come over?" And I said, "Sure, Doc, what is it?" He said, "I want to talk to you about Steve's math test." I said, "I'm in my pajamas, I'll be right over." So I come over there, and he said, "Frank, you know, Steve's trying to get into optometry school eventually. How could you give him a D?" I said, "Doc," everybody called him Doc. He was the greatest guy of all time. "Doc, first of all, I had to trade Bert Chapisky to get Steve's test, and that's costing me for the next 3 months. And Steve took the test in green ink, and there were 10 problems, and he missed them all." This is a true story. This, you know, the boys know this story. Missed them all, and I said I took a red pen and started marking all over the place. So in the event that Mr. Schott wanted to check what I had done, he wouldn't flunk me. Okay. He said, "Frank, thank you very much." We graduated shortly after that, and of the group that we ran around with, Steve went to Tulane for his first year. Tulane was on a semester system, started sometime in August. Vincent and Coleman and Ron Levin and I got in a car last week of August and drove down and spent 4 days with Steve before his classes started at Tulane, because we missed him so much, you know. Interestingly, my school started then. About 3 weeks later, and on my 3rd day in school, I met Judy. We signed up for something called Freshman Senate. I drove her home for the first meeting. I never went back. And I don't think she had any career as a university student senator either, but that's when we met for the first time. As an adult, Howard mentioned the board at Tuckerman Optical. The board was John Fall, myself, and Mel Schottenstein. And I was really pleased to hear that Howard said that Steve actually consulted with John Fall and listened to him, because he never listened to any of us for the entire time we were on the board. I don't know that he ever listened to anybody. He was very stubborn, but unbelievably funny and lovable, When he sold that business, I'd also like to mention Steve had unbelievable taste, always, okay? As he was opening optical stores, he always had the best locations in the mall, for which I thank Les Wexner in helping him just a little bit. You know, you took the escalator to the top of the stairs, and there was a Tuckerman optical store. Couldn't have been a coincidence, Les. But he sold the business, and with his vision and good taste, got into the home building business and built an awful lot of very nice homes in New Albany. I'm going to tell you one that started not so nice. Ronnie Rudolph, who at that time was being tutored by Steve in the home building business after he left his previous career, said, "I want you to see this one house Steve built." I don't know where it was. Brandon. Okay, Brandon. At that time, Steve was really getting started. This was probably an $800,000 house at the time, not the bigger houses he built later in his career. And I go through the house, and it was a beautiful layout. House looked nice from the outside. Big surprise, it was red brick. No disrespect there. Maybe a little. And it had more built-in cabinets than the next 5 houses on the street in one house, okay? And they were in poplar, which is the least expensive actual wood you can buy, other than like balsa or something, you know? And it was stained kind of a light color to a point that it didn't matter what room you went into, it had built-ins, and they were light poplar, and so that was that. And so I thanked Ronnie for taking me there, and I called Steve. I said, "Steve, I saw the house on Brandon today. It's a hell of a floor plan." I said, "But you'll never sell the place." He said, "Why not?" I said, "All those built-ins, you got to do something about the wood." And in true Steve fashion, he wanted to know who named me the ambassador of good taste. So I said, "Well, nobody, but I don't need to have good taste to know this is bad taste. But if you're going to have that attitude toward me trying to help you, I'm going to put a hex on the house." So Steve and I would talk an average of 3 times a week our whole lives. And we didn't talk for about 6-8 weeks, other than maybe a hi and a bye if we ran into each other. And one day, Ronnie Rudolph calls me and said, "Steve painted the cabinets white. And he's got somebody that wants to go in contract on the house." So I said, "Awesome." So I called Steve, and I said, "Tuck, I feel badly we're not talking. I feel badly about the hex. I'm going to take the hex off your house." Anyhow, so a little bit of context. Growing up, you know, children, high school students, college students, Steve was 1 year at Tulane and came back here and went to optometry school, and we carried on in life as usual. He got married to Judy like August 29th or something, 1965, 2-3 months after we graduated. Wedding in Youngstown, where Judy, you know, would tell me forever that I insulted her rabbi. It's hard to believe. You know, but anyhow, I will say this. Steve was a really good father, but he was a great grandfather. Okay, great grandfather. Jonathan and I were over his house one night, late afternoon, and Steve had this telephone that opened up as a flip phone. It was a Samsung. Everyone else in the world in his life had an Apple. He had a Samsung. He didn't know how to answer it, but you could open it like this, and he could watch Charlie or Sam in the games they were playing. Okay, he didn't know how to open it for a phone call. And we tried to get it on his TV set for about an hour and a half, and he just continued. Month and a half later, he's in the hospital and can't get it on his phone. And Elise comes in and says, "I can do that for you, Dad." And he said, "No, you can't." And he's arguing with Elise. So then Elise has an iPad, and she puts it on the iPad, and now he's watching Charlie play on the iPad. But you couldn't tell him anything, okay? I mean, but you loved him for it, you know? Anyhow, I just appreciate being able to give you some stories about Steve so that you don't leave here thinking he was a saint. But knowing that he did deserve all the praise that he got, and we're all going to keep thinking about him for an awful long time, and enjoy the stories and enjoy knowing him. Hi, Steve. Anyways, thank you for having me up, and thank you, Steve, for being who you were and my best friend. Thank you.
Finally, an assortment of his most treasured gifts, the grandkids. Come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is Georgia. Thank you so much for being here. Our grandfather, who we all call GP, was a one-of-a-kind, absolute legend of a grandpa. He was hysterically funny and unwaveringly supportive, and we feel so blessed to have grown up with him in our everyday lives. My brothers and I are in full agreement that GP was one of the funniest people we've ever met. He regularly had us doubled over laughing, usually from jokes that were wildly inappropriate. Unfortunately, most of those jokes were so inappropriate that I shouldn't share them all today. But I hope to still share some of our favorite memories of his larger-than-life energy. Everything GP did for us came from a place of deep love and care, even if his methods were a little unconventional. For example, my brother Charlie plays soccer, and at one of his games, GP decided that he didn't want to watch from the sidelines like everyone else. Instead, he stayed in his SUV and then drove at least 100 yards over the sidewalk and grass, on and past other fields, directly to Charlie's field. As confused parents and players stared on in absolute disbelief, GP parked his car on the sideline and supported Charlie from the comfort of his vehicle. GP also loved his dog Daisy like family, and maybe like one of his high school buddies. During a recent visit, GP and Ari were sitting on the back patio, and GP was enjoying a Miller Lite. He opened a second one, but not for Ari. Totally casually, GP poured the beer straight into Daisy's dog bowl, as if this was a completely normal thing he did all the time. And as many of you know, GP and Nana became icons at Columbus Academy. They showed up to all our games and matches, week after week, arm in arm. Their support for us was unconditional. This especially showed when Charlie started playing college soccer. Even though GP no longer felt healthy to travel, he watched all of Charlie's games, even from hospitals, via streaming. That said, for all the sporting events GP loved to attend, GP despised, and I mean despised, our musical events. The choir concerts, the band concerts, etc. Just this past year, Nana wasn't doing well and GP's energy was low. I was sitting with him and chatting when suddenly he sat straight up and asked me, very seriously, "Do you know what the worst moment of my entire life was?" My heart completely dropped. I braced myself for something totally heartbreaking. But no, he said, "Your piano recital." At that old church in Reynoldsburg. Apparently, the snooze fest of my first grade piano recital haunted him for decades. Other than that, GP was a super proud and supportive grandparent. He loved representing our colleges, often all at once. It was completely normal to meet him for lunch at the Rusty Bucket and find him dressed up in a Boston University hat with a Tulane sweatshirt with a Claremont McKenna long sleeve underneath. Finally, one of my favorite memories of GP was a riddle he told me over and over again, one that we already heard today, and one that I still haven't cracked. When I was young, GP told me, and I quote, "A wet goose flies best by night." I've gone back to him occasionally with my theories about what this means, but none of my ideas impressed him. To this day, I still have no idea why a soaking wet goose, flying in the dark, with absolutely no visibility, would be especially good at flying. That saying, "a wet goose flies best by night," will stay with me forever, partly because of how much I love GP, and partly because it will continue to torment me. I am still trying to figure out whether it actually means something, or whether GP was just very committed to messing with me. And honestly, knowing him, it's probably both those things. What an extraordinary blessing that GP was a constant presence in our lives. He was a great lunch date, our most loyal fan, and the leader of our family. We love you, GP, and we'll really miss you.
Beautiful.
Hi, I'm Lauren. First, I want to say how honored and how thankful I am to be able to share some memories of my grandpa. As many of you may know, my family moved back from from Oklahoma to Ohio 5 years ago. Although the move was disorienting, the absolute best part of moving back was the amount of time we got to spend with Nana and GP. It gave us a chance to spend the past 5 years creating memories with our grandparents. GP was definitely excited about the move, mostly because it meant that my siblings and I weren't going to be Oklahoma rednecks with bad grammar. Since we moved back, my brother Jackson, also known as Jack, loved golfing with GP. Anytime he goes to the driving range now, GP's voice will be still in his head reminding him, "We all know you can send the ball flying, but let's focus on getting it near the red flags instead of trying to put a hole through the barn." I spent this past summer interning in Columbus, and GP and I had nightly catch-ups together around 9:30 p.m. GP, the pooch, also known as Daisy, and I would lie around together, usually watching Scandal, drinking root beer floats, all while relaxing and listening to any life advice GP had for the day. I learned a lot during our nights together. For example, GP taught me that chicken pot pie from KFC is a true delicacy and one of the most nutritious meals you could eat. He claimed, as a matter of fact, it contained all the necessary food groups. GP also taught me that one of the best places to find a husband was at the racetrack, though it remains a mystery to me what that even means, like a lot of the things he told us. And of course, one of my personal favorites was GP's urgent warning about drinking. We needed to be extremely careful with alcohol, as he believed blondes get drunk much faster than anyone else. To which I responded, "I didn't think Craig was blonde when he was younger." His egregious conspiracies and beliefs did not stop there. He tirelessly told me I could not go into engineering, as it was a dying industry and no one could make money in it. GP gave the most unique life lessons that you couldn't get anywhere else. I'll never forget GP's humor, but also never forget the main theme of most of our talks. Be there for people around you and never take family for granted. As I've gotten older, I've seen how deeply he had our backs through life's ups and downs, even when we didn't realize it at the time. I wish I could go back and truly thank him for picking us up when we fell down and for always reminding us that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're gonna miss his phone calls and his advice and his constant presence. But when I look at my family, I remember that we're his legacy, and each of us carries him with us. And we're better off because of it. Thank you.
Beautiful.
I remember when I was much, much younger, I was walking with my grandpa, and I spotted a famous former Ohio State University athlete in the distance. I pointed him out and excitedly explained that he was my idol. My grandpa stopped me in my tracks and told me I should be careful about who I choose to idolize and how much I choose to worship them. He said, if you prick his finger, you know, the same color comes out of his as yours. And he told me that it's more powerful to pick people to idolize who you can actually observe. People you can watch up close, see how they lead, notice how they treat people. After this dramatic advice, he of course said, okay, now let me introduce you. His advice was right then, and it's just as sage now. It has been powerful to reflect on this advice these past few days, though, because I'm confronted by just how much I idolize him. Because I had 30 years to watch him up close, to learn from him, to see how he led, to see how he treated people. I looked up to him for so many reasons. For one, he was truly the coolest grandpa. Even the name Grandpa wasn't good enough for him. GP, so much sleeker. Growing up, I remember thinking that GP acted younger than most of my friends' parents. He dressed cooler. His jokes were funnier, certainly more inappropriate. And I mean, how many people do you know in their mid-70s that can brag about doing shirtless pull-ups in the morning and hitting holes in one later in the afternoon? And as someone who is by any account a rule follower, this being me, I also admired his ask for forgiveness, not for permission approach to everything. As we learned, he parked his car where he wanted. In addition to George's story, I also remember for one of my youth baseball games, he literally parked his car in the outfield and watched me from there. When I asked him what compelled him to do this after the game, he said, I would have gotten closer, but I thought I might have hit the right fielder, and I wasn't sure if you were friends with him or not. When it came to golf tee times, he simply didn't make them. Why? He golfed when he wanted to. I remember often sheepishly smiling as an innocent bystander and passenger in the golf cart as he rolled up to the first tee box, saw the starter, waved, and said, good morning, we're next. These are good examples of him never asking for permission, but it's worth noting that if needed, if truly needed, he could also ask for forgiveness. Convincingly so, I'll add. My favorite example of this involves my brother back in high school. I wasn't there, but according to my brother, there was a party in New Albany. Over 200 people were there, and apparently that weekend, the parents were out of town in Mexico. Naturally, the cops showed up. Now, the stakes were high for Sam. He was certainly not about to risk sacrificing his college offer, so he needed help. And in this moment of distress, his first call wasn't to his responsible brother. It wasn't to his loving parents. You guessed it. He called GP at 1:15 in the morning. And like the hero he was, GP picked up and said he was on his way. 10 minutes later, the night was saved and the cops were gone. Well, I'll always wonder what he said to the cops that night. What matters is he showed up, and it just showed that he could really do it all. More than anything, though, I got to see a different side of my GP in the years after the pandemic. As my grandmother's health deteriorated, I witnessed his role as a lover, a life partner, a caretaker. It was really special to see someone who I'd always revered as so cool and often so uncompromising about what he wanted, also be so loving, so effortlessly unselfish. As someone who is spending a lot of time thinking about vows right now, particularly in the context of a wedding, they are of course beautiful, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health. But admittedly to me, they can feel a bit abstract. It's easy to make grand promises when life is good. That's why it was so touching to hear my GP basically reiterate vows at their final celebration for life, an event he cared so deeply about with so many people he truly loved. He looked my grandma in the eyes, and he repeated and said, "I love you, and I will always take care of you." His vows were not hollow. It's how he chose to live the final years of his life. It feels surreal to commemorate their passing so close to each other, but it's hard to also not take some solace knowing that they weren't apart for long. They simply couldn't be. GP was, of course, right about choosing who to idolize. The best kind of admiration is not from distance. It's up close, and it's over time. GP gave me that gift. He gave all of us that gift. And like anyone who's been lucky enough to have a role model like that, I want to live in a way that honors him. If I ever have a grandchild on the West Coast 3 hours behind, I hope that I'll still call at midnight Eastern time when everyone else is asleep and I just want to choose to check in. I hope I'll never miss a kid's or a grandkid's game. And I hope I'm such a fan that I demand to always have the best seat in the house, even if that seat is on the field. And most of all, I hope I can carry forward the unconditional love my GP gave to my Nana and our entire family. Big shoes to fill, but what a blessing to have them and an opportunity to try.
Thank you for those exquisite memories shared so beautifully by all of you. Thank you. More memories will be shared later. Immediately following this, we will drive in procession to Forest Lawn Cemetery for the interment. Shiva will be observed this afternoon at the Tuckerman's residence from 4 to 7 with Kaddish at 5 o'clock. Additional visitation will be held on Monday, tomorrow, December 22nd, from 4 to 7 at the residence, again with Kaddish recited at 5. A final word before we dismiss and make our way to the cemetery. This is by Rabbi Louis John Aaron, and it's called "When Will I Be Myself Again?" When will I be myself again? Some Tuesday, perhaps in the late afternoon, sitting quietly with a cup of tea and a cookie. Or Wednesday, same time or later, you will stir from a nap and see him. You will pick up the phone to call him. You will hear him voice unexpected advice and maybe argue. And you will not be frightened, and you will not be sad, and you will not be alone, not alone at all. And your tears will warm you, but not today, and not tomorrow, and not tomorrow's tomorrow, but someday. Some Tuesday late in the afternoon, sitting quietly with a cup of tea and a cookie, and you will be yourself again. Please rise. Ask the pallbearers to please come forward. We'll recite El Malei Rachamim first, and then you'll come around. You can stand right there.
El Malei Rachamim Shachen Bamramim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar HaRakia Masirim Et Dishmot Shmuel ben Shlomo ve'Esther Shehalach le'olamo בעל הרחמים, אז תראו בשית כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen.
El Malay Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Dr. Stephen Tuckerman, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
יושב בסתיון בצשתי התלונן, אומר לאדוני מקסים מצדתי אלוהי אבטח בו, כי הוא יצליחה מפח יכוש מדבר היפות רבתו יצלח. לחסה ונחב תחסה, ציווה ותורה אמיתו.
תירא מפחד לילה מחץ יעוף ימם, מדבר יאכל בחלוף ישבש צהריים, ומנך אליו קרבם.